Hello friends, my name is Dimitri. You can come to me with questions about immigration, about life in the country, about accounting services, and everything related to starting and supporting a business. And today we will talk about one very important event for many people that has happened in the past few months, increase in the cost of accounting services in Montenegro, both for active companies and for inactive ones. But first, a bit of history. How it used to be. When I came to Montenegro, that was way back in 2011, the cost of accounting services for inactive companies in Montenegro started at 100 euros plus VAT. That is, VAT in Montenegro was 17% back then, now it's 21%, so it was 100 euros plus VAT. And in 2014, many Russians arrived, including Russian accountants who opened their own agencies. I associate the subsequent changes in prices specifically with their arrival. They started to aggressively undercut prices. As a result, prices at both Russian and Montenegrin agencies dropped by half to 50 euros plus VAT respectively. And what changed in the period from 2020 to 2022? As you know, as a result of the pandemic, prices for everything started to rise sharply for services, for goods. In other words, not only in Montenegro, but basically all over the world. Inflation has been very severe. And all of this was compounded by the Montenegrin government's desire to raise the standard of living for the population. In other words, simply put, to increase salaries, which also had a direct impact on entrepreneurs' expenses. So it turned out that on the one hand there was high inflation, and on the other hand a direct increase in business expenses, primarily the rise in salaries, which happened in 2022. And this increase was significant, about 1.5 times. This increase, well, if we're talking specifically about accounting, because that's important for accounting, the cost of final goods went up by about 30%. I'm not sure of the exact figure, but it was quite substantial. An increase in the profit tax also occurred, although payroll taxes were reduced. That is, employees started paying less tax from their salaries, and employers also began paying less payroll tax. However, at the same time, the tax on dividends on receiving dividends was increased. So it's a questionable decision. On one hand, they lowered payroll taxes, but at the same time they raised salaries themselves. So you end up paying about the same as before. On the other hand, they also increased the tax on receiving dividends. As a result, business expenses went up. And also, by the way, due to rising inflation and the increase in the cost of renting real estate, both residential and commercial in Montenegro, office rental expenses have gone up. Overall, if you sum all this up in one word, you could say that as a result of inflation and rising salaries, the profitability of business, specifically accounting businesses in Montenegro, has decreased over the past 2 years by almost half. And the remaining money, the remaining profit that entrepreneurs receive has lost about 30% of its purchasing power as well. As a result, in such a situation, an increase in the cost of accounting services had long been expected. But everyone was holding off because it's scary to be the first to raise prices. Well, they held out as long as they could, but when the situation became truly desperate, prices started to rise. Moreover, this trend is seen in both Russian and Montenegrin agencies. Let's switch to my computer and take a look at the table I've prepared. Alright, let's look at the table. As you can see, the last column on the right side, here it shows whether it's from a Russian or Montenegrin agency, and the Russian ones are also highlighted in red. We can see that prices range from 75 up to 100 euros, and there's even one that set it at 120. Overall, most are between 75 and 100. So I surveyed both Russian and Montenegrin companies, and from those who responded, I put together this table. It's likely that there are still a few holdouts, the last of the Mohicans, who are still managing inactive companies for 50 euros. I wasn't able to find any like that, but I assume they exist since there are many agencies. Not all of them have websites, and not all of them are easy to find online to send them a message and ask, but that doesn't matter. In any case, I am absolutely sure that even if there are still some of them left, then within the next few months they will also raise this whole thing somewhere. And what's interesting is that right now we see different prices from 75 to 100 euros, but some charge even more. But there are few like that, and that's kind of illogical. That is, before 2014, everyone charged 100 euros for inactive companies. After 2014, everyone charged 50 euros. So there wasn't this kind of difference before, but now there is. It feels like some people just immediately set the price they wanted, while others were afraid to do that and decided to raise it gradually. Now we'll set it at 75, see how things go, and if everything is fine, then in 6 months or so we'll raise it again. Well, that's just my assumption. In any case, when there is this kind of difference, it's illogical because the more expensive ones will lose out on clients and the cheaper ones also lose profitability, which is also bad. The price needs to settle at some value. Either it will drop, for example, to 75 euros or maybe to 80 euros, I don't know. Or, on the contrary, it will rise to 100 euros for everyone. So in any case, I think that by next summer, we'll see that the price will somehow adjust and everyone will have the same rate. Right now, there's this kind of difference, plus or minus 25 euros. Honestly, I think it's more likely that the price will rise to 100 euros, but of course, I can't know that for sure. Time will tell. And also, pay attention, I always mention the cost of accounting services as the price plus VAT. Why? Because most accounting agencies process well. Some process everything through the bank account. Others process a significant portion in short. In any case, a substantial amount of money goes through the company's current account. In Montenegro, companies become VAT payers if their annual revenue exceeds 30,000 euros. Of course, we're talking about official declared revenue. So, since everyone processes at least a significant portion this way, almost all agencies, with very rare exceptions, are VAT payers. That's why I say the cost of services is plus VAT. So, what will the price of this service be, the price I just mentioned? 75 or 100 euros plus VAT? Let's take a look. I've prepared two screenshots for you. Here's the first screenshot. You can see that the price is 75 euros, and on the left side in a little red rectangle is the price with VAT, that is including VAT. 75 euros plus VAT comes out to 90 euros and 75 euro cents. And here's the second image. If, for example, you turn to an agency where the price is already 100 euros, then with VAT, the cost of accounting services will be 121 euros. So that's the news for today. Thank you all for your attention. Goodbye, everyone.